Hello, let's go ahead and talk about how to heal Grimrail Depot. So this one's actually pretty short. There's really not that much to go over, but nonetheless, we will go ahead and walk through this. So the first mob that you're going to be encountering is the Grimrail Overseers. And these guys, basically, all they're going to do is a bit of tank damage, and then they'll do a charge ability. On the tank, it's called Dash right there. It always targets whoever they're aggroed to, so it'll typically be the tank, and the tank should just be facing them into a wall or away from the group, and then they will just do a light amount of damage to the tank. The next important mob is the Grimrail Technicians. These guys will, shortly after you pull them, they will walk over to these wheels, these like giant iron wheels that are sitting on these like, these like raised platforms, and they will cast activating, and you just want to make sure that you interrupt that. You'll probably see this one cast it here shortly. It'll walk over and start casting activate, and then that's the other cast they do is 50,000 volts. That also just needs to be interrupted, otherwise it stuns everybody. And if activating goes off in a high key, it's a wipe. In a lower key, it's just a lot of group damage. So you can use stuns, crowd control, all that kind of stuff to interrupt the activating and the 50,000 volts as well. So as a healer, as every type of healer in the game, even if you don't have an interrupt, you can still help out with it. So just be mindful of the technicians. And then other than that, you just fight copy paste mobs until we get to the boss. So we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit until we get there. All right, now this boss, there are two bosses active at the same time. We'll talk about one at a time. So the first one is Borka the Brute. He will cast Slam occasionally. And when he does cast this, you want to make sure that you're not in the middle of a cast because it will interrupt and silence you for a short amount of time. It's right there. And it does do a moderate amount of like group damage. So that's something to be mindful of. And then he will also cast Mad Dash, as you can see right there, he just did. And that's just like the dashes from the Grimrail Overseers. The tank just needs to face that into the boss, the other boss, Railmaster Rocket Spark, and then the boss will jump down and take increased damage for a short amount of time once that Mad Dash hits him. Now, the only other thing to be mindful of in this fight is when Railmaster Rocket Spark is done doing this stuff, he will jump up. It's not the better position. I'll show it in just a moment. Should start doing it. Might be after this one. Might end up killing him before he does it again. I'll have to rewind it if so. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and rewind. So Railmaster Rocket Spark will jump up on one of the piles of boxes that are surrounding the room and start doing a moderate amount of unavoidable group-wide damage to everybody. It's right here. So when he jumps up, he says all systems online, fire, and then it's this X-21-01A missile barrage. When he's doing that, it's just constant unavoidable damage until the Mad Dash goes off. So that's where you'll probably want to be using healing cooldowns, is for that missile barrage. And then other than that, it's pretty passive. It's just healing the slams and keeping everybody topped up for each of the slams. All right, next up, I believe we just all go all the way to the train car because there's not really any important mobs leading up until then. Okay, so the train cars are awful in the way that line of sight is and stuff, so just bear with me on the recording. It's kind of annoying. But the first important mob is going to be the Grom'kar Gunners. They're going to do shrapnel blasts, which you can see them just constantly channeling periodically, and it always faces the tank. But if you're standing in it, like right here, you can see me gaining stacks up here on my debuff counter. And what that does is just increase your damage taken from, it's either all sources or just the shrapnel blast. But either way, you don't want to be getting hit by it and standing in the frontal. So just be aware of which way they're facing. The next important mob is the Grom'kar Cinderseer. These guys will cast Lava Wreath, which will do damage to the group. It's kind of like almost like a chain lightning effect. So you want to try to stay as spread out as possible inside the car. And then these like pools of fire on the ground, you just want to stay out of them because it does a very, very heavy amount of damage when you're standing in it. And then the next mob is going to be actually the boss, which is coming up. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward it a little bit. Okay, so Nitrog Thunder Tower is going to cast, I believe it's Blackrock Mortar is going to be the first ability, which is right here. He'll face a random direction or player and then kind of just throw these AoE bombs on the floor. All you have to do is just whenever he turns and faces a direction, you should just get out of that spot. So like right here, everybody should just move from that side of the boss to this side of the boss over here. And that's how you avoid that. And then once he hits 60%, he's going to go into his phase 2, which is like technically the actual fight, you could say. And the important thing here is he's going to cast Suppressive Fire on one player at a time. He's just going to pick a random player besides the tank. And they'll have like a little fixate thing above their head, and they just need to hide behind pillars. You can't hide behind these boxes, like right next to me, these little small boxes. Those won't work. It has to be something that's fully obscuring, you to the boss. So you either use the pillars or these giant boxes back here, stuff like that. Things that will actually block the shots from hitting you. Otherwise, you'll take a large amount of damage. And then essentially all you're doing is killing ads during this fight. And certain ads drop different types of ammo. I believe it is the Grenadiers, the Gunners, and one other mob that drops ammo types. The Gunners drop the Shrapnel Blast ammo, so you can jump in these little turrets if you're next to all the mobs and use the Shrapnel Blast on the mobs to kill them faster. And then the Grenadiers drop these Blackrock grenades that you can pick up and just throw. It's like an extra action button. You can just throw it at the mobs and it just does a little bit of extra damage. And then the Grom'kar boomers are the ones who drop the actual, I think it's the Blackrock mortar shots. And you want to pick those up when they die. So when these mobs die, you just walk over their body. It picks up the Blackrock mortar shell, and then you just jump in any of these turrets, target the actual boss in the assault cannon, and then use this. I think it's like the second button on your bar, and you just it will do like a third of his health in damage. And then once you shoot him 3 times with those, then you move on to the last phase, which is just fighting ads and just the boss pretty much standing there doing nothing. So this is the main part of the fight. And just understanding the ammo types and how to utilize them is going to be the most important. But other than that, not too much to worry about here. All right, next up we have the last bit of mobs that are left. The Grom'kar Farseers are going to cast Storm Shield. This needs to be either interrupted or purged immediately as soon as it goes on them, because it will do a ton of damage to the group if you keep attacking them while they have the Storm Shield on themselves. So either make sure you interrupt it or have a class that can purge it and make sure that they know to purge it, because it will hurt a lot. You can see here, this is us getting hit by the Storm Shield right there for a moment. That was us getting hit by it. Okay, and then they will also cast Thunder Zone, which is just these little pools of lightning on the floor. You just stay out of those. And then the Grimrail Scouts will cast Arcane Blitz. I believe this just spawns these like avoidable swirls on the floor, so you just avoid that. And then the Grom'kar Captain, the only thing important about the Grom'kar Captain is every now and then it'll cast Reckless Slash right here, which is a 360 AoE around the mob. So just if you're a melee healer or you're in melee, make sure you're aware of that. All right, and then we have the boss. So the boss is going to do a Lightning Breath, which is just an unavoidable group-wide damage ability that happens every, I would say like every 15 seconds or so. It's called Thunderous Breath, more specifically. So it's right there. And so you just want to keep the group topped off for each of the Thunderous Breath. That's probably the most important. And then other than that, the boss will cast Freezing Snare, which drops these little traps on the floor on random players' positions. And you just want to make sure that you don't touch those. If you do touch them, they root you, do a lot of damage, and it's an AoE splash. So if there's any other players around you, they will also get hit by it. And then lastly, the boss does Spinning Spear, usually after dropping a trap. So it'll drop a Freezing Snare, and then you'll watch her. She's going to do a Spinning Spear, usually after this next Thunderous Breath. So here goes the Spinning Spear. You can see she faces a random direction or random player and then throws a spear that stuns and does a heavy amount of damage. So it's really just avoiding stuff and then keeping the group topped up for each of the Thunderous Breath. And at the start of the season, there was a safe spot. As you can see here, the Druid is utilizing it, but this no longer works as far as I'm aware. So that's why I'm not mentioning it as part of the run. So yeah, that's literally it for Wrong Dungeon for Grimrail Depot. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys later.